Reverence is a quality and emotion so rare in our society that at age 61, I had to look up its meaning. My favorite definition, out of all I found, is profound, adoring, awed respect. How often do we give it, or receive it, or even sit in the presence of it? Profound, adoring, awed respect. Let that meaning in those words sit in your brain for a moment. Try to absorb them, to understand them. But don't be surprised if you have some difficulty, like I did. Real reverence is very rare in our world, so we don't have much experience from which to understand it. Sometimes it seems easier to understand its absence than its presence. And I think in large part, it was a lack of reverence that brought humanity, all 7 billion of us, to the crisis we face today. A lack of reverence for the web of life that allowed us to see the dead bodies of other living creatures as food sources and gourmet experiences. A lack of reverence for the global human family that led us to forget that the bonds of our common biology are far more powerful than the imaginary lines we draw on a map. A lack of reverence for the obligations of leadership that led our governments all over the world to value short-term political considerations over preserving the health and lives of those they're responsible for protecting. A lack of reverence for the dignity of service that saddled essential professions like delivery and grocery and cleaning and healing and caregiving with low status and low pay and life-threatening working conditions. A lack of reverence for the duty of care that has allowed millions of prisoners whose ability to protect themselves has been taken from them, to remain in prisons that now have the world's highest concentration of coronavirus cases. A lack of reverence for the whole planet that's led us to value never-ending economic expansion over protection of the air we breathe and the water we drink and the ability of Mother Earth to survive long enough to nurture all the generations of our children yet to come. But this rhythm of bad decisions and worse outcomes is not inevitable. If it was losing our ability to revere those parts of life that most deserve it, that got us into this crisis, then it stands to reason that reawakening that sense of reverence is one of the most certain ways to lead ourselves back to a safe and well-balanced and happy world. We are already tentatively moving in that direction, instinctively drawn by our deepest intuitions. People are beginning to recognize each other's humanity anew, beginning to see that we all share the same basic needs and fears and fragility of life, beginning to realize there's a common current of spirit in which we all swim. You can see it in grand gestures, like whole neighborhoods in Rome singing to each other, and New York high-rise residents whooping and showering applause on healthcare workers every night at 7 p.m. Or firefighters pulling their trucks up to a hospital at shift change and applauding. You can see it in small gestures, like all the business meetings that now start with a few minutes, sincere minutes, of sharing each other's virus experience and wishes for the safety and wellness of colleagues and families. You can see it in the new regard for cashiers and truck drivers and EMTs and delivery workers, or the way that walkers and runners on a path calibrate their safe distance with smiling eyes and friendly nods, or the way that parents and children and grandparents and grandchildren and old friends and even ex-lovers who haven't talked in ages are all now getting back in touch with each other. You can see it in the practical, proactive steps people are taking to keep their neighbors and communities safe, like the fourth grader in New York who single-handedly has sewn and donated close to 1,000 face masks, or cannabis companies like the Galley and Liberty Clothing who have converted their manufacturing lines to produce PPE, like hand sanitizer and face masks, and then donating those products to healthcare workers and other at-risk populations. Or the billionaire who pledged 28% of his net worth to relief efforts. These tiny steps are just signposts. Signposts pointing us towards one of our possible futures. If we have the humility to recognize that what used to work before the virus wasn't actually working, at least not the way we want things to work, and we have the wisdom to heed these signs that are being presented to us, I believe we can create a future that incorporates some of the gifts this crisis has brought us amongst all the suffering and death and misery. Gifts like the worldwide level of emissions of pollutants dropping to the lowest level that we've seen in modern times. Gifts like the waters of the canals of Venice running so clear that dolphins can be seen swimming in them. Gifts like the skies clearing over Indian cities so much that for the first time in decades, the Himalayan mountains are coming into view. Gifts like a beginning of an understanding that the prosperity and the health of all of us is dependent on the health and prosperity of each and every one of us. Gifts like the understanding that being well and being safe and being loved are really the most important things in life. All of these gifts, all of this positivity, all of this change is coming to us now through disruption, through crisis. Just imagine, though, if we use our imaginations, if we pull together, if we take the signposts seriously and we follow them, and we exercise conscious intention and sustained effort, imagine the kind of world that we can all build together. I think it's the world that we really all wanted to live in before the coronavirus hit. It's the world I still want to live in. And it's the world that I know we can all get there together.